The desperate mother screamed as she watched her 2-year-old daughter crawl toward the open backyard gate, a gate that led directly to the busy street where cars sped by without caution. But what happened next would leave everyone in the neighborhood speechless as their family dog, Maximus, normally so gentle and playful, suddenly charged across the yard, blocking the toddler's path with his body and refusing to let her move another inch toward danger. No matter how hard little Emma tried to push past him, tears of frustration streaming down her face. The determined German Shepherd stood his ground, barking urgently until the mother could reach her child. If stories of incredible animal instincts and the unbreakable bond between pets and children touch your heart, subscribe now to our channel where we share these extraordinary moments of animal heroism that remind us some angels have 4 paws and fur. Sarah Williams never considered herself a dog person, not even remotely, before Maximus came into their lives. She had been the type to politely pet a friend's dog while secretly hoping it wouldn't shed on her clothes, or worse, jump up and leave. Muddy paw prints on her carefully selected outfit. But life has a way of changing our most firmly held beliefs, especially when those changes involve children and the unexpected heroes who protect them. The Williams family had moved to Pinewood Lanes, a suburban neighborhood with picturesque houses and spacious yards, just before their daughter Emma was born. The kind of neighborhood where people actually knew their neighbors' names, where children played together in front yards, and where the annual block party was a highlight of the summer calendar. It was the perfect place to raise a family, or so Sarah and her husband Michael had thought when they signed the mortgage papers. What they hadn't considered was that the charming, winding road that ran past their house would become increasingly busy as new housing developments sprung up just beyond their neighborhood. The once quiet street now saw cars regularly exceeding the 25 mph speed limit as harried commuters cut through. To avoid traffic on the main road, some of their miracle baby had come into their lives after years of fertility struggles, her arrival transforming Sarah and Michael in all the ways new parents are changed: sleepless nights, endless worry, overwhelming love, and a fierce protectiveness that seemed to rewrite their very DNA at 2 years old. Emma was the center of their universe, a curly-haired bundle of energy with a mischievous smile and a determined spirit that both delighted and exhausted her parents. She was just beginning to assert her independence in all the ways toddlers do, the word no becoming her favorite, along with the phrase, "Emma, do it," as she insisted on attempting everything herself, from putting on shoes to climbing into. Her car seat Maximus had joined their family almost by accident. When Emma was just 6 months old, Sarah's brother Jake, a military veteran, was being deployed overseas and needed someone to take his beloved German Shepherd. Initially, Sarah had refused. Flat out, a dog that size with a baby in the house? Absolutely not, she had told Jake. But Michael had seen something in his brother-in-law's eyes, a desperation, a need to know his loyal companion would be cared for while he served their country. Just for the year, Michael had promised Sarah, and if it doesn't work out, we'll find another solution. Reluctantly, she had agreed, though she spent the first night after Maximus arrived lying awake, listening for any sound that might indicate the massive dog had somehow gotten into the nursery. What Sarah couldn't have anticipated was how quickly Maximus would appoint himself Emma's guardian. From the moment the German Shepherd entered their home, he seemed to understand his role, watching the infant with gentle curiosity and surprising patience as Emma grew from a stationary baby to a crawling explorer. Maximus was always there, positioning himself between Emma and potential dangers, moving items out of her reach with his nose, and alerting Sarah with a soft whine whenever the increasingly mobile baby managed to find some new hazard that had escaped child-proofing efforts. "It's like he has a sixth sense about her," Michael observed one evening after watching Maximus gently herd Emma away from the fireplace hearth. "He's not just tolerating her, he's actively protecting her." Sarah had gradually moved from reluctant dog host to appreciative cohabitant. Though she still maintained firm boundaries, Maximus was not allowed. On furniture, would eat only in the kitchen, and had to be brushed outside to minimize the hair in the house. But even she couldn't deny the bond that had formed between the dog and her daughter, or how Maximus had begun to feel less like her brother's pet and more like a member of their family when Jake returned from his deployment and came to reclaim his companion. He had immediately noticed the change. "You're happy here, aren't you, buddy?" he had said quietly, scratching behind the shepherd's ears as Maximus divided his attention between his original owner and the toddler playing nearby. The decision that followed had been difficult, but ultimately, Jake had recognized what everyone could see. Maximus had found his purpose as Emma's protector, and separating them would serve no one. "He belongs with your family now," Jake had told Sarah, his voice thick with emotion. "Some things are just meant to be," and so Maximus had officially become a Williams, the adjustment of legal ownership, a mere formality that acknowledged what had already happened in their hearts, the shepherd settling into family life with what seemed like satisfaction, taking his role as Emma's guardian with the seriousness of a sworn officer. He would position himself strategically in whatever room Emma occupied, and during her naps would lie directly outside her bedroom door, rising immediately when he heard her stirring on neighborhood walks. He would position himself between the stroller and the street ears, alert to any approaching vehicles, his body language communicating clearly to anyone who observed that this child was under his protection. It was a warm Saturday morning in early June when the incident happened, the kind of perfect early summer day that beckons families outdoors. Sarah had been preparing lunch in the kitchen, while Michael worked on his laptop at the dining room table. Emma had been playing with her toys in the family room with Maximus, as usual, keeping watch from his spot. Near the couch, the back door was open to allow the fresh breeze in, though the screen door was closed, or so Sarah had thought. What she didn't realize was that Michael had briefly stepped outside earlier to check the grill propane level and hadn't pulled the screen door completely shut, leaving it slightly ajar. Just enough for a determined toddler to push open. Sarah would later struggle to reconstruct the exact sequence of events. How Emma had managed to slip away from the family room without either parent noticing how quickly she must have crawled across the back patio toward the gate that led to the front yard, a gate that should have been latched but somehow wasn't, perhaps left open by the lawn service that had come the previous day. All she knew for certain was the moment of pure terror when she glanced out the kitchen window and saw her daughter halfway across the yard, heading directly toward the open gate, beyond which cars regularly sped past at dangerous speeds, or distance between her and Emma suddenly seeming impossibly vast as she dropped the plate she was holding and screamed her daughter's name. What happened next seemed to unfold in both slow motion and lightning speed. Simultaneously, Sarah's scream alerted Michael, who jumped up from the table, knocking over his chair in his rush to respond. But it was Maximus who reacted fastest. The shepherd had been in the family room, but at the sound of Sarah's panic came bolting through the house, faster than Sarah had ever seen him move. His powerful body surging across the yard with single-minded purpose before either parent could even reach the back door. Maximus had positioned himself directly in Emma's path, blocking her access to the gate, his large body forming a living barrier between the toddler and the danger that awaited beyond. Emma, clearly frustrated by this unexpected obstacle, tried to push past the dog, her little hands pressing against his side, her face scrunching up in the familiar precursor to a tantrum. But Maximus stood firm, gently repositioning himself each time she attempted to maneuver around him. When Emma became more insistent, trying to crawl between his legs, Maximus began to bark, not aggressively but urgently, as if calling for backup, his deep, resonant wooves echoing through the yard, loud enough to alert neighbors several houses away, all while he continued to prevent Emma from reaching the gate, using his body to herd her away from danger, never once showing aggression. despite the toddler's increasing frustration. By the time Sarah reached them, Emma was sitting on the grass crying in frustration, little fists balled up in anger at being thwarted in her quest for freedom. Maximus still stood guard, his attention divided between the child and the street beyond, maintaining his position until Sarah scooped Emma into her arms, at which point the shepherd's posture relaxed slightly, though he remained vigilant, his eyes still tracking movement on the street. "Oh my God," Sarah gasped as the reality of what might have happened hit her full force, her legs nearly buckling beneath her as she clutched Emma tightly to her chest. Only then did she notice the delivery truck speeding past their house well above the neighborhood speed limit. The driver oblivious to the potential tragedy that had just been averted. Michael arrived seconds later, his face pale with fear as he took in the scene, comprehension dawning in his eyes as he noted the opened gate. "He stopped her," Sarah said, her voice shaking. Maximus blocked her from going through the gate, as if understanding he was being discussed. The shepherd looked up at them, his duty now complete, his tail beginning to wag. Gently, Michael knelt down, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck, his voice choked with emotion. "Good boy, Maximus, good boy." He repeated the words inadequate to express the gratitude overwhelming him in that moment. Sarah, too, found herself looking at their family dog with new eyes beyond appreciation, beyond affection. What she felt now was a profound sense of debt, a life debt that could never truly be repaid. The incident left both parents shaken. For days afterward, they found themselves checking and rechecking gates and doors, installing additional child safety measures, and never letting Emma out of their sight. Even for a moment, the realization of how quickly tragedy could strike had shaken their confidence, leaving them hypervigilant and anxious. Maximus, too, seemed affected by the event, becoming even more attentive to Emma's whereabouts, sleeping positioned between her bedroom door and the stairs, as if anticipating another escape attempt, the shepherd's protective instincts now operating at an even higher level. His dedication to his charge unwavering. Word of Maximus's heroism spread quickly through the neighborhood, starting with Helen Matthews from across the street, who had witnessed the entire scene from her front garden. "That dog saved your baby's life," she told Sarah firmly when she came over later that day, bringing a batch of stress-baking cookies and a new chew toy for Maximus. "I saw how fast that delivery truck was going if she'd gotten through that gate." "Joa." Helen left the sentence unfinished, the implication clear to both women. "Animals know things," the older woman continued, patting Maximus, who had positioned himself at Sarah's feet. "They sense things we don't. You're blessed to have him." The story continued to circulate, growing slightly with each retelling, as neighborhood stories often do by the following week's community meeting. Maximus had achieved minor celebrity status, with neighbors stopping by with dog treats and pats of approval. The Williams family suddenly at the center of the community's attention in a way they had never been before. The experience was surreal for Sarah, who found herself recounting the story repeatedly, each telling bringing back the terror of that moment, but also the overwhelming relief and gratitude that had followed. "We always saw him as my brother's dog that we were taking care of," she admitted to their next-door neighbor Carol. "But he's ours now, completely ours. He's family." What Sarah didn't share with the neighbors was how the incident had affected her on a deeper level, beyond the immediate fear and subsequent relief. It had forced her to confront her own prejudices and preconceptions. She, who had never wanted a dog, especially not one as large as Maximus, had been protected by that very animal in the most profound way possible, her most precious treasure. Her daughter kept safe by the creature she had initially resisted. Her thoughts kept returning to what might have happened if she had stood firm in her refusal when Jake needed someone to take Maximus, if she had insisted on finding the dog another home when Jake decided not to take him back, how different their lives might be. Now the very thought made her shudder. Williams' family settled into a new normal in the weeks that followed the incident. With increased safety measures now in place and a deeper appreciation for their four-legged family member, Emma seemed to understand on some level that Maximus had done something important for her, her interactions with the shepherd taking on a new dimension of affection. She would bring him her toys to share, drape her small arm around his neck, while watching cartoons and call out "Max, Max" whenever she wanted. His attention for her part, Sarah found herself relaxing. The house rules that had once seemed so important, Maximus was now allowed on the living room furniture, invited to lie at the foot of their bed and given special treats without occasion, simply because he deserved them. Michael came home one evening about 3 weeks after the incident to find Sarah sitting on the couch with Emma asleep on her lap, and Maximus stretched out beside them, his head resting against Sarah's leg, her hand absently stroking his fur as she scrolled through her phone. The scene was so natural, so comfortable, that Michael paused in the doorway, simply watching his family complete and content. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I want to get Maximus certified as a therapy dog." The suggestion surprised Michael, not because it wasn't a good idea, but because it represented such a dramatic evolution in Sarah's relationship with the dog. "He has a gift," she continued, "and I think other people could benefit from it too, not just us." The process of getting Maximus certified as a therapy dog proved more involved than Sarah had initially anticipated, requiring specific training, temperament evaluations, and health clearances. But she approached the project with the same determination she brought to everything in her life, researching requirements, contacting organizations, and finding a reputable trainer who specialized in preparing dogs for therapy work. Brad Jenkins, a former military dog handler who now dedicated his life to training service and therapy animals, was impressed with Maximus from their first meeting. "He has an exceptional temperament," Brad observed, as he put the shepherd through initial assessments, strong protective instincts, but balanced with gentleness, and an unusual ability to read human emotions. It's rare to find all these qualities in one dog, especially one without formal training. The training sessions became a family activity with Michael, Emma, and Sarah all participating in different aspects of preparing Maximus for his new role. Emma delighted in helping with simple commands, giggling as she held up treats and instructed "Max sit" or "Max paw." Her toddler pronunciation making the words sound even more endearing. Maximus responded to her with remarkable patience, his eyes focused attentively on her face, as if understanding the importance of these interactions to their bond. Brad noted the shepherd's particular attentiveness to changes in emotional states. "Watch how he responds when Emma gets frustrated," he pointed out during one session, as the toddler struggled to get a training vest fastened on her stuffed animal companion to match the one Maximus wore. "See how he moves closer, puts his head under her hand, calming." Presence, that's something you can't really train, it's innate. Sarah found herself fascinated by the training process, discovering a whole community of therapy dog handlers she hadn't known existed, people who volunteered their time and their animals. Unique abilities to bring comfort to those in need. Nursing home residents, children in hospitals, veterans suffering from PTSD. She began to see possibilities for Maximus that extended far beyond their family emergency rooms, where anxious patients might benefit from his calming presence. Schools, where children with reading difficulties could practice by reading aloud to a non-judgmental canine audience. Perhaps even disaster response, where his steadiness might provide emotional support to those who had lost everything. She shared these thoughts with Michael one evening after Emma had gone to bed. "It's like we've been given this gift," she said, "and now we have a responsibility to share it." Jake visited during Maximus's training period, both to see his niece and to observe the transformation of his former companion. The reunion between man and dog was emotional, Maximus whining with excitement, his whole body wiggling with joy as he recognized his first owner. But what struck Jake most powerfully was watching the shepherd's interactions with the Williams family, the way he constantly tracked Emma's location, how he responded to Sarah's commands with eager compliance, the comfortable familiarity with which he leaned against Michael's leg during family conversations. "You know," Jake said thoughtfully as he and Sarah watched Emma and Maximus playing in the backyard, "when I left him with you, I thought it was temporary. I never imagined he'd become so completely yours." "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked quietly, sensing a hint of wistfulness in her brother's tone. Jake considered the question before shaking his head. "No, how could I, when he was exactly where he needed to be when it mattered most?" He smiled as Emma threw a ball for Maximus, who fetched it and returned it to her feet with gentle precision. "Some things are just meant to be." He repeated the words he had said when making the decision to leave Maximus with them. "Besides," he added with a grin, "I'm dating someone with a very vocal chihuahua. So my life has canine complications of its own these days." The siblings laughed together, the moment of potential tension dissolving into shared amusement at life's unexpected turns after 6 months of consistent training and practice. Maximus passed his therapy dog certification with flying colors, Brad presenting his official vest, and identification with obvious pride. "He's one of the best I've worked with." The trainer told Sarah and Michael, "You have a very special animal here." Though Sarah had once considered herself decidedly not a dog person, she now found herself immersed in the world of canine therapy, learning terminology, volunteering at events, and connecting with others who shared this passion, all while juggling her primary responsibilities as Emma's mother and her part-time work as a graphic designer. Her social media accounts, once filled with design inspiration and parenting memes, now featured regular updates on Maximus's training and eventually his therapy visits. Their first official assignment as a therapy team was at Pinewood Lanes Elementary School, where the principal had established a reading program for students struggling with literacy, children who felt self-conscious reading aloud to teachers or peers often blossomed when given the opportunity to read to a dog. The non-judgmental presence, reducing anxiety, and building confidence, Maximus proved particularly suited to this work, lying patiently beside nervous readers, his calm demeanor and attentive ears giving children the impression of an engaged audience. Sarah watched in amazement as children who had been reluctant to speak in class eagerly read page after page to the German Shepherd, some even confiding their personal struggles to him in whispered conversations between book chapters. Emma, now approaching her 3rd birthday, was fiercely proud of her dog's accomplishments, insisting on helping to prepare him for each therapy visit, brushing his coat with her small toddler brush, though Sarah always redid it later, and making sure his therapy vest was properly positioned. "Max help kids," she would announce to anyone who would listen, her vocabulary growing impressively. Though still flavored with toddler pronunciation, he's a hero dog. The connection between Emma and Maximus continued to deepen, the shepherd seemingly understanding his young human's developmental stages, adjusting his behavior to accommodate her. Growing independence while maintaining his protective vigilance, watching over her on playground visits, monitoring her interactions with new children, and always positioning himself strategically to keep her in sight. It was during one of these playground visits that Sarah witnessed another example of Maximus's extraordinary instincts. Emma had made friends with a quiet boy named Oliver, who rarely spoke and kept to himself on the periphery of the playground. According to his mother, Cynthia, Oliver had sensory processing issues that made the chaotic environment of the playground overwhelming. Maximus, watching the children play, suddenly got up from his spot beside Sarah and walked deliberately to Oliver, sitting gently beside the overwhelmed child, his body creating a buffer between Oliver and the noisy playground. The boy, who had been covering his ears and rocking slightly, visibly relaxed, placing one small hand on the shepherd's fur. Cynthia watched in amazement as her son's anxiety visibly diminished. "It's like he knew," she whispered to Sarah, "like he understood exactly what Oliver needed." The incident led to conversations with Oliver's occupational therapist and eventually to a new dimension of Maximus's therapy work with children on the autism spectrum, his calm, predictable presence providing a sense of safety and regulation that helped the children navigate overwhelming sensory experiences. Sarah found herself increasingly drawn to this work, witnessing the profound impact Maximus had on children who struggled to connect with the world around them in conventional ways. Something about seeing the shepherd bridge these gaps touched her deeply, perhaps because it reflected her own journey from resistance to connection. Her own prejudices overcome through unexpected circumstances at home too. Maximus continued to demonstrate his remarkable awareness. One night during a severe thunderstorm, he woke Sarah by placing his paw gently on her arm, whining softly when she blearily opened her eyes. He immediately headed to Emma's room, where Sarah found her daughter awake and terrified by the loud thunder. The shepherd had sensed the child's distress before her cries could even reach her parents' ears. These moments accumulated, building a tapestry of evidence that convinced Sarah that the bond between humans and animals, particularly dogs, went far deeper than she had ever imagined before Maximus came into their lives. As Maximus's reputation as a therapy dog grew, opportunities for his special brand of healing expanded beyond the local elementary school to include visits to the Pinewood Lanes retirement community, the regional children's hospital, and occasionally the Veterans Center, where Jake volunteered. Each setting revealed new dimensions of the shepherd's abilities. His gentle patience with elderly residents who told him the same stories repeatedly. His calm steadiness beside children undergoing painful medical treatments, his quiet, understanding presence for veterans battling invisible wounds of war. Sarah watched in wonder as her brother's former pet, the dog she had initially resisted, transformed lives with his silent communion, seeming to absorb pain and offer comfort without words, a gift that human caregivers, with all their training and good intentions, couldn't quite replicate. "It's like he speaks a language we've forgotten," observed Dr. Eleanor Green, the director of the Children's Hospital Pediatric Oncology Unit, after watching Maximus spend time with 8-year-old Leah, a patient whose aggressive treatment had left her withdrawn and depressed. The German shepherd had settled beside her bed, resting his head near her hand, not demanding attention but offering connection when ready. After nearly 20 minutes of silence, Leah had begun to stroke his fur and eventually to speak softly to him, sharing fears she had kept locked inside for weeks. "Animals communicate soul to soul," Dr. Green continued. "No expectations, no judgments, just presence. That's something we humans rarely achieve." Michael, too, marveled at the transformation, not just in the lives Maximus touched through his therapy work, but in Sarah herself. His wife, who had once meticulously lint-rolled dog hair from her clothing, now carried treats in her pockets, took countless photos of Maximus and Emma together, and spoke at community events about the benefits of a therapy animals. The woman, who had reluctantly agreed to temporarily house her brother's dog, had become an advocate, a true believer in the profound connection possible between humans and animals. The change in her worldview extending beyond Maximus to a greater openness to experiences she might previously have dismissed. "You know what's funny," she told Michael one evening as they watched Maximus and Emma curled up together on the living room rug. "I used to think people who treated their dogs like family members were slightly ridiculous. Now I understand they weren't anthropomorphizing. They were recognizing Emma, now 3 years old and fiercely independent, in the way of preschoolers, had developed a communication style with Maximus that fascinated everyone who observed them together. The child seemed able to convey her needs and intentions to the shepherd through subtle gestures and expressions, while he communicated back through body positioning, ear movements, and eye contact. They moved through the house and yard in a coordinated dance, neither invading the other's space, yet always aware of each other's presence. When Emma's preschool teacher, Mrs. Evans, visited their home to discuss Emma's potential early enrollment in the school's enrichment program, she witnessed this silent communication firsthand. "I've taught early childhood for 20 years, she told Sarah, "and I've never seen anything quite like their connection. It's extraordinary." That connection was tested during a family vacation to Sarah's parents' lake house. A 5-hour drive from Pinewood Lanes, the change in environment initially unsettling for both Emma and Maximus. Though for different reasons, Emma missed her familiar routine and toys, while Maximus seemed constantly on alert in the new space checking windows and doors repeatedly, as if assessing potential threats. It was their second night at the lake house when Sarah woke to Maximus's urgent whining at her bedside, his behavior reminiscent of the thunderstorm incident, but more insistent. More. Alarmed following him to Emma's room, she found nothing amiss, her daughter sleeping peacefully. Yet Maximus remained agitated, moving between Emma and the window, his ears forward, his body tense with alertness, trusting the shepherd's instincts. Sarah quietly woke Michael, who checked the house, finding nothing unusual, until he reached the kitchen, where he discovered the gas stove had been left partially on unlit, but steadily filling the house with gas at a level too subtle for human detection. But not for Maximus's sensitive nose. The potential disaster averted, they opened windows to air out the house, Michael repeatedly checking on his sleeping daughter while Sarah sat on the floor, her arms around Maximus's neck. Tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "That's twice now," she whispered into his fur. "Twice you've saved her." The shepherd leaned into her embrace. His mission accomplished, his vigilance never failing even in unfamiliar surroundings. The incident reinforced for both parents the extraordinary gift they had been given in this animal, whose protective instincts transcended training or expectation. Returning home from vacation, Sarah found an email from Brad Jenkins, their therapy dog trainer, with an unusual request. The local news station was preparing a special feature on therapy animals in the community and was looking for compelling stories. Would Sarah be willing to share Maximus's journey from family pet to local hero to therapy dog? Her initial reaction was hesitation. Public attention had never been something she sought or particularly enjoyed. But after discussing it with Michael, she recognized the opportunity to raise awareness about therapy animals and perhaps inspire other families to consider the profound benefits such relationships could bring to their lives. Besides, Michael pointed out, Maximus deserves recognition for everything he's done. The interview took place in their backyard, Emma playing nearby as Sarah recounted the near tragedy that had transformed their relationship with Maximus, while the shepherd himself lay calmly at her feet, occasionally lifting his head to check on Emma's whereabouts. The reporter Melissa Chan was clearly charmed by both the story and its canine protagonist. "What do you think makes Maximus special?" she asked, scratching behind the shepherd's ears. "Is it training instinct or something else entirely?" Sarah considered the question, carefully watching as Maximus got up to follow Emma, who had wandered toward her sandbox. "I used to think extraordinary dogs were the product of extraordinary training," she answered, "but now I believe some animals simply have an innate capacity for connection and protection. Maximus understands things about emotions, about intentions, about dangers that seem beyond explanation." The segment aired the following week, focusing not just on Maximus's heroic intervention with Emma, but on his ongoing work as a therapy dog, the impact he had on children struggling with reading, on elderly residents battling loneliness, on veterans facing the invisible wounds of Toddler. The producer had skillfully woven together interviews with those whose lives had been touched by the shepherd, creating a portrait of one dog's remarkable journey and the ripple effects of his gentle presence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The station's social media accounts flooded with comments, the Williams family receiving emails and calls from people sharing their own stories of animal heroism and asking how they could get involved with therapy animal programs. "I had no idea it would resonate with so many people," Sarah told Michael, as they scrolled through hundreds of comments, many bringing tears to their eyes. Among those who reached out was Dr. Catherine Mills, a veterinary behaviorist conducting research on exceptional canine cognitive abilities and emotional intelligence. "Maximus's story highlights capabilities we're only beginning to understand. Scientifically," she explained when Sarah returned her call, "the ability to detect human emotional states, to anticipate dangers, even to understand complex social dynamics. We're finding evidence that some dogs possess cognitive and empathetic abilities far beyond what we previously recognized." Dr. Mills asked permission to include Maximus in her ongoing study, which would involve simple observational sessions and non-invasive cognitive tasks designed to better understand these exceptional abilities. After consulting with Brad Jenkins, who enthusiastically endorsed Dr. Mills's research, Sarah agreed arrangements were made for the first assessment to take place the following month. Dr. Mills arrived at the Williams home on a crisp autumn morning, equipped with a variety of testing materials and accompanied by her research assistant Daniel, a doctoral student specializing in animal cognition. Emma immediately appointed herself Dr. Mills's helper, proudly showing the researcher her dog's favorite toys and demonstrating commands, while Maximus watched the proceedings with calm interest. Seemingly understanding that something important was happening, the assessment began with simple object recognition and problem-solving tasks, which Maximus completed with ease, showing what Dr. Mills described as above-average cognitive processing. But it was during the empathy and emotional recognition tests that the shepherd truly distinguished himself, demonstrating an exceptional ability to differentiate between acted and genuine emotional displays. "This is remarkable," Dr. Mills commented as she reviewed the results of a particularly complex test involving subtle emotional cues. "He's not just responding to obvious signals like tears or raised voices. He's picking up on micro-expressions, changes in breathing patterns, slight shifts in body language that most humans wouldn't consciously register." She turned to Sarah, her expression both professional and awed. Based on these preliminary assessments, Maximus ranks in the highest percentile of emotional intelligence we've documented in domestic dogs. His ability to integrate multiple subtle cues and respond appropriately is truly exceptional. The validation of what Sarah had intuitively recognized was gratifying, but not surprising. She had witnessed Maximus's extraordinary perceptiveness daily for years, now seeing him respond to emotional needs often before they were verbally expressed. Dr. Mills's research continued over several months with periodic assessment sessions and observational periods during Maximus's therapy visits. The data collected becoming part of a larger study on exceptional canine abilities. "We're finding evidence that challenges our understanding of animal consciousness," she explained during one follow-up discussion. "Dogs like Maximus suggest capabilities for empathy, abstraction, and even moral reasoning that traditional animal cognition models don't account for." For the Williams family, the research provided fascinating insights into their companions' capabilities, while for Dr. Mills, Maximus represented a valuable case study in her quest to understand the full potential of the human-canine bond, a relationship that had evolved over thousands of years of companionship and cooperation. Emma, now approaching her 4th birthday and increasingly verbal, had begun telling anyone who would listen, "My dog saved my life." Though she had no actual memory of the incident, her retelling, constructed from family stories, had become part of her identity, the little girl who had been rescued by her heroic dog. she had developed an interest in all things veterinary carrying, around a toy medical kit to check Maximus's health and declaring her intention to become an animal doctor. When she grew up, Sarah and Michael encouraged this interest, finding age-appropriate books about animal care and arranging for Emma to meet their own veterinarian, Dr. Perez, during Maximus's annual checkup. The shepherd patiently enduring Emma's amateur examinations with the same tolerance he showed for all her enterprises, his gentleness with her never wavering, despite her occasionally clumsy enthusiasms. The publication of Dr. Mills's preliminary research findings in a respected veterinary behavior journal brought renewed attention to Maximus's story, with inquiries coming from national media outlets and even a documentary filmmaker. Interested in featuring the shepherd in a series about extraordinary animals, Sarah approached these opportunities with careful consideration, balancing the value of sharing Maximus's story with the family's privacy and the shepherd's well-being. "He's not a performing animal," she explained to the documentary producer, "and while we're proud of his abilities, we want to ensure any participation respects his nature and doesn't exploit him." This protective stance extended to Maximus's therapy work as well, with Sarah becoming increasingly selective about engagements, ensuring adequate rest between visits, and watching carefully for any signs of stress or fatigue. It was during this period of increased attention that the Williams family received unexpected news. Jake was being relocated to a military base just 30 minutes from Pinewood Lanes after years of deployment and distant assignments. He would finally be stationed close to family, the prospect of having her brother nearby delighted Sarah while creating an interesting dynamic with regards to Maximus. "Do you think it will be strange for him?" she asked Michael, as they prepared for Jake's first visit to their home since the news segment had aired, seeing Maximus in this new role with all this attention. Michael considered the question thoughtfully. "It might be an adjustment," he acknowledged, but Jake was the one who recognized something special in Maximus from the beginning. He chose him as a puppy trained. Him gave him a foundation that made everything else possible. "I think he'll be proud." Jake's reaction upon visiting and witnessing Maximus's therapy work firsthand confirmed Michael's prediction. "I always knew he was exceptional," Jake told his sister as they watched the shepherd working with a group of children at the library's reading program. "But seeing him like this, fulfilling such an important purpose, it's beyond anything I could have imagined when I brought home that gangly puppy 5 years ago." There was no resentment in his voice, only genuine pride, and perhaps a touch of wonder at how life's unexpected turns had led to this moment. "You know," he added, "military working dogs are selected for very specific traits: intelligence, focus, drive. But what makes Maximus special is something different, something rarer: his capacity for connection. I think that's why he's able to do what he does." The conversation with Jake prompted Sarah to reflect more deeply on Maximus's journey and the transformative impact he had had, not just on Emma's life, but on their entire family. "He changed me," she admitted to Michael that evening, after both Emma and Maximus had gone to bed. "Not just my attitude toward dogs, but my understanding of connection, of communication. I was so verbal, so logical, so focused on words and explanations. Maximus taught me there are other ways to understand, other ways to speak, other ways to care." Michael nodded, recognizing the truth in her reflection. "He made me a better father too," he added. "Watching him with Emma, his patience, his attentiveness, his unconditional presence, it's a model of caregiving in its purest form." These reflections took on new significance when Sarah discovered she was pregnant with their second child, the news bringing both joy and a renewed awareness of life's unpredictability. They had been trying for several months, hoping to give Emma a sibling, though aware that their previous fertility struggles might make the journey difficult. The positive test results came as a welcome surprise, though tempered with the caution that comes from past experience, as they shared the news with Emma, carefully explaining that a new baby would be joining their family in the spring. Her reaction was typical of her practical nature. "Will Maximus protect the baby too?" she asked immediately. Concerned about the logistics of expanding her dog's guardianship responsibilities, Sarah assured her that yes, Maximus would certainly watch over the new baby just as he had watched over Emma, a promise she made with complete confidence, knowing the shepherd's extraordinary capacity for care. Maximus himself seemed to sense the change even before Sarah's pregnancy became physically apparent, his behavior subtly shifting, becoming more attentive to her movements more frequently, checking on her location within the house. Brad Jenkins, the therapy dog trainer, noted the change during a certification renewal session. "He's responding to your pregnancy," he observed, watching Maximus position himself closer to Sarah than usual. "Some dogs can detect hormonal changes extremely early. It's not uncommon for them to become more protective, more attentive when their owners are expecting." This biological awareness, another facet of Maximus's remarkable sensitivity, didn't surprise Sarah, who had come to expect the extraordinary from their family guardian, though it did reinforce her sense of wonder at the depths of his perceptions. Sarah's pregnancy progressed smoothly through the autumn and winter months, with Maximus's attentiveness increasing proportionally. To her growing belly, the shepherd developed a new habit of resting his head gently against her abdomen during quiet evenings, as if listening to or communicating with the developing baby. This behavior fascinated Emma, who would often mimic him pressing her own ear to her mother's stomach and then reporting what conversations she and Maximus were having with her unborn sibling. The family began preparations for the new arrival, converting the home office into a nursery with Emma and Maximus, supervising the process in their own ways. Emma with enthusiastic suggestions about colors and decorations. Maximus with careful inspection of each new piece of furniture and equipment brought into the space. "He's assessing everything for safety," observed Jake, who had come to help assemble the crib, watching as Maximus sniffed and examined each component. "It's similar to how military working dogs check vehicles or buildings. They're cataloging everything, identifying potential hazards." This perspective gave Sarah a new appreciation for Maximus's methodical inspections, his apparent obsession with certain corners of the nursery or specific pieces of baby equipment, not random but purposeful. A security assessment conducted with the seriousness of a professional. Even the pediatrician, Dr. Monroe, remarked on Maximus's behavior during a home visit to discuss birth preparations. "I've seen family dogs become protective during pregnancies," she noted, watching the shepherd position himself between Sarah and the door when the doorbell rang. "But this level of awareness is exceptional. He's already transitioning from protecting you to protecting both you and the baby." As Sarah entered her third trimester, Maximus began sleeping positioned against her bedroom door, rather than at the foot of the bed as had been his custom. Michael initially thought this might be discomfort with Sarah's restless sleep, but Brad Jenkins offered another interpretation. "He's positioning himself strategically," the trainer explained. "From that position, he can monitor both your room and the rest of the house. He's preparing for the possibility that you might need assistance during the night, especially as your due date approaches." This explanation aligned with other subtle changes in the shepherd's behavior. His increased alertness when Sarah was alone, his tendency to stay closer to her when visitors came to the house, his apparent assessment of new people entering their home with more thorough scrutiny than before. These protective behaviors, while touching, occasionally created challenges, particularly regarding Maximus's therapy work schedule. "He's reluctant to leave you," Brad noted, during what should have been a routine therapy visit to the children's hospital, observing how the shepherd repeatedly looked back at Sarah as they prepared to depart. "His priorities are shifting, focusing more exclusively on family protection." After discussion with Brad and Dr. Mills, they decided to temporarily reduce Maximus's therapy commitments, focusing only on the reading program at Emma's preschool, where Sarah could be present, and a monthly visit to Jake's veterans group, where Jake's familiar presence provided additional security for the shepherd's peace of mind. The adjustment seemed to help Maximus balance his service work with his intensifying focus on family protection. His demeanor more relaxed when Sarah remained within his visual field. In early March, with Sarah's due date just 3 weeks away, a late winter storm hit Pinewood Lanes, bringing heavy snow and ice that caused widespread power outages throughout the region. The Williams home lost electricity around midnight, the sudden darkness and cooling temperature waking both Sarah and Michael. The backup generator should kick in, Michael assured her, reaching for his phone to check the system installed after Emma's birth, specifically to ensure they would never be without power during an emergency. But the generator had failed to engage, likely due to ice buildup around the external components. "I'll need to go out and reset it manually," Michael said, throwing back the covers and reaching for his robe. "Should only take a few minutes," the flashlight still in the bedside drawer. Sarah watched anxiously as Michael fumbled for the flashlight in the darkness outside their bedroom window. The wind howled, driving snow and ice against the glass. Emma thankfully still asleep in her room just as Michael located the flashlight. Maximus, who had been lying at the bedroom door, suddenly stood alert, his posture rigid, his attention focused not on Michael or the storm, but on Sarah herself. The shepherd approached the bed, whining softly, nudging Sarah's hand with his nose, his behavior reminiscent of how he signaled Emma's distress during thunderstorms, but different somehow, more urgent, more insistent. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked, running her hand over his head to reassure him. But the shepherd was not reassured, continuing to nudge her with increasing determination. Michael paused in the doorway, flashlight in hand. "Everything okay?" he asked. Noting Maximus's unusual behavior, Sarah started to nod, then gasped as she felt a sudden cramping sensation followed by a warm rush of fluid. "Michael," she said, her voice tight with surprise and mounting. "Concerned my water just broke." For a moment, Michael stood frozen, processing the implications. They were 3 weeks from the due date, in the middle of an ice storm with no power and unreliable phone service due to downed lines throughout the region. "Okay," he said finally, his voice deliberately calm. "Okay, this is earlier than expected, but we've got this. I'll call Dr. Monroe, get the emergency bag from the closet, and then we'll head to the hospital. The road should still be passable if we go." Slowly, but Dr. Monroe's phone went straight to voicemail, likely affected by the same outages hitting their neighborhood, and when Michael attempted to start their car, the engine refused to turn over, either from the extreme cold or some storm-related issue. Sarah felt another contraction stronger than the first, the pain causing her to grip the doorframe as Michael helped her back inside. "How far apart are they?" he asked, checking his watch, trying to recall the guidance from their birthing classes. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "That was only the second one," but it felt intense. As if understanding the seriousness of the situation, Maximus began moving purposefully between them, his body language communicating urgency, while Emma, still mercifully asleep, remained unaware of the unfolding crisis. "I'll try Jake," Michael decided, reaching for his phone again. "He has that military-grade truck, might be our best option." This call connected, though the signal was weak. Jake immediately grasping the situation. "I'll be there in 20, he promised. "Just keep Sarah comfortable. I've got chains on the tires, should be able to make it through." The 20 minutes stretched interminably as Sarah's contractions increased in both frequency and intensity, occurring now barely 8 minutes apart, Michael timing them with growing concern while gathering essentials and checking on Emma, who continued to sleep soundly. Maximus remained glued to Sarah's side, his body pressed against her leg. When she sat, his eyes never leaving her face, as if monitoring her condition with the same attentiveness he brought to all his protective duties. Jake's arrival, announced by headlights illuminating the snow-covered driveway, brought momentary relief until he delivered unwelcome news. Main roads completely blocked, he reported, brushing snow from his jacket. Tree down across both lanes. Emergency services are working on it, but it could be hours. He took in Sarah's position, her face contorted with another contraction. How far apart? He asked, echoing Michael's earlier question. Just under 7 minutes now. Michael replied, his voice tense with worry, moving pretty fast for a first labor. Jake nodded, his military training evident in his calm assessment of the situation. Options, he said simply: hospital route blocked, home birth unplanned, but possibly necessary, nearest alternate medical facility. Michael ran his hand through his hair. Nearest alternate would be the urgent care clinic about 5 miles north, but I don't know if they're equipped for delivery. As the three adults debated their limited options, Maximus suddenly left Sarah's side, something he had refused to do for hours, and went to the front door, his posture alert, his attention fixed on something beyond their awareness. "What is it, boy?" Jake asked, recognizing the focused alertness from their military days together. The shepherd whined, pawing at the door with clear intent. "Someone out there," Jake surmised, moving to look through the peephole, the visibility nearly zero in the swirling snow and darkness, shifting his attention to Maximus, whose behavior suggested certainty rather than speculation. Jake made a decision. "I'm going to check," he announced. Grabbing his coat. "Might be emergency services clearing the roads," Michael nodded. Staying beside Sarah, who was breathing through another contraction while Jake and Maximus ventured out into the storm, they returned minutes later, accompanied by Dr. Catherine Mills, the veterinary behaviorist, snowflakes melting on her parka, her medical's bag clutched in gloved hands. "I was on my way back from an emergency call when the roads closed," she explained quickly. "Taking in the situation, saw your lights, tried calling, but couldn't get through. Maximus must have heard or sensed my approach." She turned to Sarah, professional assessment replacing surprise. "I'm not an obstetrician, but I do have medical training, including emergency obstetrics from my disaster response certification. How far apart are the contractions?" When told, "Just under 6 minutes now," she nodded. "Let's get you more comfortable and assess where we are. This baby might not wait for roads to clear or services to be restored." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Jake volunteering to monitor Emma, who still slept soundly, while Michael assisted Dr. Mills in preparing their bedroom for a potential delivery. "In veterinary medicine, we often work with limited resources," she noted, with a calm efficiency that helped settle Sarah's mounting anxiety. "The principles remain the same. Ensure sterile conditions, monitor vital signs, manage pain, maintain calm." She examined Sarah with professional detachment. "You're progressing quite rapidly for a first delivery already, 5 centimeters dilated. We should prepare for the possibility that this baby is coming here and soon." Maximus had resumed his position beside Sarah, his presence a steady comfort, his attention divided between her face and Dr. Mills's activities, as if assessing both Sarah's condition and the doctor's competence. "I need to ask you a medical question that might seem strange," Dr. Mills said, as she helped Sarah through another contraction. "Are you comfortable with Maximus remaining present during delivery? Animals, particularly dogs, have a long history of attending births in many cultures, and given his extraordinary sensitivity to your condition, he might actually be beneficial unless his presence causes you anxiety." Sarah had never considered the question, but found the answer came easily. "He stays," she said, gripping Michael's hand, as another wave of pain crested. "He's been protecting this baby since before we knew about it. He should be here when it arrives." Dr. Mills nodded approvingly. "I suspected you'd say that, but needed to check. My research suggests that bonded animals can actually help regulate stress hormones during labor, potentially facilitating the process." As Sarah's labor intensified, the storm outside seemed to match its rhythm. Howling winds and driving snow creating a cocoon of isolation around the Williams home. The power remained out, though Jake had located and distributed flashlights and battery-operated lanterns, creating pools of golden light. In the darkness, Emma woke briefly disoriented by the unusual activity, Michael explaining that her baby brother or sister was coming earlier than expected. Maximus knew, Emma observed with a child's simple acceptance. That's why he was acting funny, before allowing herself to be settled in the guest room with Jake, who promised pancakes for breakfast and stories until she fell back asleep. Dr. Mills continuing her preparations with the limited resources available, sterilizing instruments from her veterinary kit, boiling water on their gas stove, gathering clean towels and sheets. By 5 in the morning, Sarah's contractions were coming less than 3 minutes apart, her body instinctively shifting to the final stages of labor. "You're fully dilated," Dr. Mills announced after a final examination. "On the next contraction, I want you to push." Maximus had maintained his position throughout the night, occasionally repositioning himself, but never leaving Sarah's side. His calm presence a counterpoint to the storm's chaos and the intensity of labor. When Sarah began to push, the shepherd moved to position himself at the head of the bed, his body pressed against the pillow supporting her, allowing her to grip Michael's hands while maintaining contact with Maximus's reassuring presence. "He's supporting you," Dr. Mills observed between contractions, "physically and emotionally, a literal shoulder to lean on." The final stage of labor progressed with surprising speed, given it was Sarah's first delivery. Whether due to the baby's early arrival, Maximus's calming presence, or simply the unpredictable nature of childbirth, within 40 minutes of beginning to push, Sarah delivered a healthy baby boy, his indignant cries filling the room as Dr. Mills efficiently cleared his airways and placed him on Sarah's chest, 6 pounds 3 ounces approximately, she estimated, wrapping him in a clean towel. Excellent color, good lung function, slightly early, but appearing perfectly developed. Michael stared in wonder at his son, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, the fear and tension of the night dissolving into pure joy as he counted tiny fingers and toes. Maximus watching the proceedings with evident interest, his posture alert but calm, his eyes fixed on the new addition to his family. "What's his name?" Dr. Mills asked as she continued her post-delivery care, monitoring Sarah for any complications, while the newborn nuzzled against his mother's chest, already attempting to nurse. Sarah and Michael exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "Noah, Sarah," announced Noah Jacob Williams. She smiled at her brother, who had returned to check on them once Emma had fallen back asleep, after his uncle, who gave us the greatest gift we never knew. We needed. Jake's eyes filled with tears, understanding the deeper meaning behind the naming, and Mills. Michael added, "Noah Jacob Mills Williams, if that's okay with you, Dr. Mills, in honor of your unexpected but crucial presence tonight." The veterinarian looked startled, then deeply touched. "I'm honored," she said simply, "though I suspect if I hadn't arrived, Maximus would have somehow guided you through. Anyway, he's been more attuned to this process than some medical professionals I know." As dawn broke, the storm began to ease, sunlight gradually filtering through breaking clouds, illuminating the snow-covered landscape with diamond brilliance inside the Williams home. A new family configuration was taking shape. Emma had woken and been brought in to meet her baby brother, her delight evident in her wide eyes and careful touches. Maximus, maintaining his protective vigil, now expanded to include the newest member of his charge, the shepherd gently sniffing the newborn before settling into a position where he could observe both children simultaneously. "He's adjusting his security perimeter," Jake noted with professional appreciation. Expanding his protection to include Noah. Power was gradually being restored throughout the neighborhood. Emergency services finally clearing the roads, allowing Dr. Monroe to arrive mid-morning, her professional assessment confirming Dr. Mills's field evaluation, perfectly healthy despite his early arrival. she pronounced after examining both Sarah and Noah. Though I recommend a hospital visit later today for more comprehensive testing once the roads are fully cleared in the quiet aftermath. As Sarah rested with Noah cradled in her arms, Michael sat beside them reflecting on the extraordinary circumstances of his son's birth. "We've come full circle," he observed softly. "From Maximus saving Emma to him helping bring Noah safely into the world." Sarah nodded, stroking the shepherd's head as he lay vigilant beside the bed. "Some things are just meant to be," she echoed Jake's words from years before. "Maximus was always meant to be part of our family, just as Noah was always meant to arrive during a snowstorm with a veterinarian and a German shepherd in attendance." She smiled down at her son, his tiny face peaceful in sleep. "He'll grow up with quite a story." Maximus sighed contentedly, as if in agreement, his duty fulfilled once again. His family safe under his watchful protection, a guardian angel with fur and 4 paws whose extraordinary heart had expanded to embrace each new family member with the same unwavering devotion. The days following Noah's dramatic arrival settled into the exhausted blur, familiar to all parents of newborns' nights, punctuated by feedings and diaper changes, days filled with visitors bearing gifts and meals, the community rallying around the pool. William's family with practical support, Emma adapted to her role as big sister, with surprising maturity, delighting in helping with simple tasks and speaking to Noah in the exaggerated, gentle voice she had observed adults using with babies. But perhaps the most remarkable adaptation came from Maximus, who seamlessly incorporated the newborn into his protection routine, establishing a pattern of regular checks, dividing his attention between Emma and Noah with equanimity, his vigilance extending to monitoring visitors, a subtle but noticeable assessment of each person who approached the baby. "It's fascinating from an evolutionary perspective," Dr. Mills observed during a follow-up visit, both professional and personal in nature. Canids in the wild protect their entire pack with particular attention to vulnerable young. What we're seeing with Maximus is that same instinct refined through domestication and his unique sensitivities. He's essentially categorized your children as his primary responsibility, his purpose. This perspective helped explain the shepherd's new sleeping arrangement, positioning himself in the hallway with clear sightlines to both children's rooms, a strategic location that allowed monitoring of both Emma and Noah while maintaining awareness of the home's entry points. The behavior reminded Sarah of military sentries she had seen in movies, maintaining watch, protecting their charges with unwavering attention. Dr. Mills's research interest in Maximus had intensified following his role in Noah's birth. The veterinary behaviorist documenting the shepherd's adaptation to the new family member with scientific precision. "He's demonstrating remarkable cognitive flexibility," she noted, adjusting his protective behaviors to accommodate Noah's needs without diminishing his attention to Emma. It's a sophisticated balancing act that suggests advanced understanding of different vulnerability levels and threats. With the Williamses' permission, she included these observations in her ongoing study. Maximus, becoming something of a celebrity in veterinary behavior, circles his extraordinary capabilities, challenging conventional understanding of canine cognition and emotional intelligence. Papers were published, academic discussions sparked, all centered around the remarkable German shepherd who had saved a toddler from potential tragedy and helped deliver a baby during a snowstorm. As Noah grew from newborn to infant, Maximus's interaction with him evolved accordingly, the shepherd initially maintaining a respectful distance, gradually allowing closer contact. As the baby became more aware of his surroundings, by the time Noah was 6 months old, he would reach for Maximus with delighted recognition, the shepherd permitting gentle touches and responding with careful licks to tiny hands. A relationship developing that mirrored the one he had established with Emma years earlier, though with subtle differences reflecting Noah's unique personality and Maximus's own maturity. He adapts his approach to each child, Michael observed watching, as Maximus allowed Noah to grab his ear with slightly more tolerance than he had shown Emma at the same age. It's like he understands Noah, is more tentative, needs more reassurance, while Emma responds to clearer boundaries. This period of adjustment and growth coincided with increased attention to Maximus and his capabilities following the publication of Dr. Mills's research, The Shepherd. Featured in several specialist publications and even a national magazine article about exceptional animal abilities. The Williams family approached this attention with the same careful consideration they had shown previously protecting Maximus from exploitation while recognizing the value in sharing his story. If his example helps people understand the depth and importance of human-animal bonds, then there's meaning in that, Sarah reflected. During a conversation with Jake, who had become a regular presence in their expanded family, his military expertise and single-man perspective adding welcome dimension to their household dynamic. Understanding leads to respect and better treatment for all animals, not just the exceptional ones. With Noah's first birthday approaching, the Williams family began planning a small celebration to mark both his arrival and their survival of a challenging but rewarding year as parents of 2 children. The planned gathering intentionally intimate, immediate family, a few close friends, including Dr. Mills and Brad Jenkins, whose connections to their journey made them honorary family members. Preparations were underway with Emma enthusiastically helping to decorate and Maximus supervising the proceedings. With his usual attentiveness, when Sarah received an unexpected call from Melissa Chan, the reporter who had featured Maximus's story the previous year. "I hope you don't mind me reaching out," the journalist began, "but something extraordinary has happened that connects to Maximus's story in a remarkable way." The connection turned out to be through one of the veterans in Jake's support group who had been inspired by Maximus's story to adopt a retired military working dog, a Belgian Malinois named Rex, who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before being retired due to age and minor health issues. The adoption had been transformative for both man and dog, the veteran finding purpose in caring for Rex, while the Malinois provided both companionship and a natural form of therapy for the man's PTSD. That alone would be a wonderful follow-up story, Melissa explained. But there's more. Last week, Rex alerted to their neighbor's child who had wandered away from home during a barbecue. Heading toward a nearby pond, the dog located the child and prevented them from entering the water until adults arrived. It's like Maximus's protective instincts inspired a chain reaction of rescue. The story touched Sarah deeply, reinforcing her belief in the profound impact of sharing Maximus's journey. "I'd be happy to connect with them," she told Melissa, "though any follow-up should focus on Rex and his adopter. They've written their own chapter now." This perspective reflected Sarah's evolution, her understanding that Maximus's story, while extraordinary, was part of a larger narrative about the unique bond between humans and animals, a bond with dimensions and depths that science was only beginning to understand with proper permissions. The connection was made, leading to a meaningful exchange between the 2 families and an invitation for Rex and his owner to attend Noah's birthday celebration, expanding their circle to include others who understood the profound gift of canine companionship. The birthday party itself was joyful but low-key, recognizing that Noah himself would have no memory of the event, though the photographs would someday help tell the story of his early life, surrounded by family, friends, and the ever-present Maximus, who watched the proceedings with dignified interest, occasionally accepting treats from Emma, who had appointed herself his personal server. "He deserves cake too, Mom," she insisted with the absolute certainty of a 5-year-old. He's part of the celebration. As gifts were opened and cake served, Sarah found herself observing the gathering with a sense of wonder at life's unexpected turns, the family and community that had formed around them, because her brother had needed someone to care for his dog, a temporary arrangement that had permanently altered the trajectory of all their lives during a quiet moment. As the party wound down, Sarah found herself standing beside Jake, both watching, as Maximus supervised Noah's somewhat messy cake consumption, ready to clean up any drops that might fall to the floor. "You know what I remember most about when I first got him as a puppy," Jake said softly. "The breeder told me he was special, said he had old eyes, like he understood. More than other puppies, I thought it was just something they said to justify the price. But now I wonder if she saw something true. Something in his nature that was always there waiting for the right circumstances to emerge." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what her brother meant. "Some animals just have a deeper capacity for connection," she replied. "And some humans are lucky enough to be chosen by them." That evening, after guests had departed, gifts had been put away, and both children were finally asleep, Sarah and Michael sat on their back porch, Maximus lying at their feet. The spring air mild and fragrant with blooming flowers. "Can you believe it's been 3 years since he stopped Emma from going through that gate?" Michael mused, stroking the shepherd's back. "It feels both longer and shorter somehow," Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "He changed everything," she said simply. "Our family, our perspectives, our understanding of what's possible." Maximus sighed. Contentedly at their feet, his mission, ongoing his family safe, under his watchful protection. The guardian who had transformed from temporary guest to the heart of their home, his extraordinary journey continuing to unfold alongside theirs in ways they could never have anticipated, but would forever be grateful for. The years passed, marked by the familiar milestones of family life, Emma starting kindergarten, Noah taking his first steps, holiday celebrations, and summer vacations, the Williams household expanding to include a third child, Isabel Izzy, born. Under much less dramatic circumstances than her brother Maximus, continuing his role as guardian with unwavering dedication, though signs of aging had begun to appear in the shepherd gray frosting his muzzle. His movements occasionally stiffened. By early morning arthritis, that medication helped manage. Dr. Perez, the family veterinarian, assuring them that Maximus remained remarkably healthy for a dog approaching his 10th year. "Genetics, good care, and purpose," she explained during his annual checkup. "He has a reason to stay strong and vital. His family needs him." That sense of purpose remained evident in Maximus's daily routines, his attentiveness to the children unwavering, though adapted to their changing needs. Emma, now 7 and fiercely independent, still received regular check-ins, but with a respectful distance that acknowledged her growing autonomy. Noah, at 4, still warranted closer supervision, particularly given his adventurous nature, while baby Izzy became the focus of Maximus's most vigilant protection, the shepherd seemingly understanding that the youngest required the most attention, his body often positioned between the infant and potential hazards. Sarah observed these adaptations with continued amazement. "He reassesses constantly," she told Michael one evening, adjusting his approach to each child's development, their individual temperaments. It's like he has a personalized protection plan for each of them. Maximus's therapy work had evolved as well. The shepherd, now participating primarily in specialized programs working with children on the autism spectrum and veterans with PTSD populations, where his extraordinary sensitivity to emotional states proved particularly beneficial. These sessions, carefully scheduled to balance his service work with family responsibilities, a priority system that everyone respected. Understanding that the children remained his primary commitment, this work had expanded to include occasional collaborations with researchers. Studying the therapeutic benefits of human-animal interactions, Maximus's documented history of exceptional awareness, making him a valuable subject, though Sarah remained protective, ensuring these studies never became exploitative or overly demanding. "He gives so much," she explained to a particularly persistent researcher. We need to ensure he receives as much as he gives. Dr. Mills's groundbreaking research had expanded into a comprehensive study of exceptional canines, including Maximus and several others identified through her work, creating a new framework for understanding the capabilities of domestic dogs that challenged previously held limitations. "What we're discovering," she explained, during a presentation at a veterinary conference, where Sarah had been invited as a guest speaker, is that the traditional boundaries we've placed on canine cognition and emotional intelligence have been artificially low-shaped, more by our assumptions than by objective assessment. Maximus and dogs like him demonstrate capacities for empathy, abstract reasoning, moral judgment, and emotional processing. That approach, and in some cases, match human capabilities in young children. These findings, while controversial in some academic circles, had begun to influence both veterinary practice and public perception, creating greater respect for the depth of canine consciousness and the ethical implications of that understanding. At home, these academic discussions translated into practical, daily life. The Williams family's relationship with Maximus continuing to deepen with mutual understanding and respect. Michael building a special ramp to help the aging shepherd navigate the back steps more comfortably, Emma taking responsibility. For his daily brushing a ritual they both seemed to enjoy, Noah tasked with refilling water bowls, while Sarah managed medications and veterinary appointments, all contributing to the care of the animal who had given them so much. Their awareness of his advancing age, bringing both appreciation for each day and preparation for eventualities that would eventually come. "We want his senior years to be as comfortable and fulfilling as possible," Sarah told Dr. Perez during a consultation about geriatric care. "He's earned that and more." The publication of Sarah's book, Maximus, The Extraordinary Journey of an Ordinary Dog, brought their story to a wider audience, the honest account of their experiences resonating with readers around the country. Letters and emails arriving daily from people sharing their own stories of animal companions who had changed their lives in both dramatic and subtle ways. The book's success surprising everyone, including Sarah's publisher, who had initially anticipated modest sales for what they considered a niche subject. "There's something universal in your story," her editor explained. "Yes, it's about a remarkable dog, but it's also about connection, about being open to relationships that transform us, about recognizing intelligence and emotional depth in unexpected places. These are themes that transcend the specific circumstances." One particularly meaningful response came from a family in Oregon whose daughter had been diagnosed with a rare seizure disorder that standard medical detection methods struggled to predict. After reading about Maximus, the mother wrote, "We looked into seizure alert dogs and found Maisie, our golden retriever, who now gives us 15-20 minutes warning before our daughter's episodes, enough time to ensure her safety and administer medication. Your story literally changed our lives." This letter, one among hundreds, touched Sarah deeply, reinforcing her belief in the ripple effects of shared experiences. How one family's journey could illuminate possibilities for others, creating connections across distance and circumstance between people who would never meet but whose lives intersected. Through the sharing of stories, the story's reach extended beyond the book to include educational programs. Dr. Mills and Sarah collaborating on materials for veterinary students and animal behavior specialists, while Brad Jenkins incorporated lessons learned from Maximus into his therapy dog training protocols. "What we observed with Maximus shouldn't be exceptional," he often told his students. "It should be our baseline understanding of what's possible when we truly respect and nurture the human-animal bond." These educational initiatives, supported by research grants and private donations, aim to transform both professional practice and public awareness, creating greater recognition of animals as sentient beings with complex emotional lives, deserving of respect and protection, a cause that had become central to Sarah's life beyond her primary role as mother and Maximus's advocate on a personal level. The journey with Maximus had transformed Sarah in ways she could never have anticipated when reluctantly agreeing to temporarily house her brother's dog years earlier. She, who had once carefully lint-rolled dog hair from her clothing, now shared her home with not only Maximus, but also Daisy, a shelter-rescued border collie mix who had joined their family at Emma's persistent request. "I want to give another dog the chance Maximus had," her daughter had explained with wisdom, beyond her years, to have a forever family, the addition of Daisy creating new dynamics in their household. Maximus initially skeptical, but gradually accepting, mentoring the younger dog in what Sarah jokingly called guardian apprenticeship, though no dog could truly replace the extraordinary shepherd when his time eventually came. As Maximus entered his senior years, moving more slowly but maintaining his dignity and purpose, the Williams family cherished each day with him, aware that their time together, though never enough, would eventually reach its conclusion. He taught us to be present. Sarah reflected during a quiet evening, the shepherd, dozing beside the fireplace, the children finally asleep, after persistent bedtime negotiations, to recognize the value of each moment, each connection. That's his greatest gift, beyond the dramatic rescues, beyond the therapy work. Just the daily reminder that love and protection aren't abstract concepts, they're choices we make every day. Michael nodded, understanding exactly what she meant, reaching down to gently stroke the sleeping shepherd's head. "He chose us," he said simply, over and over again. "He chose to protect, to connect, to care. That's the miracle. Not just that he saved Emma or helped bring Noah into the world, but that he keeps choosing every single day." This understanding permeated the Williams household, a deep appreciation for the extraordinary being who had transformed their lives in ways both dramatic and subtle. Their awareness of his advancing age, bringing not just concern, but a profound gratitude for the journey they had shared together. Emma growing into a compassionate young person with dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Noah developing his father's quiet steadiness and problem-solving nature. Little Izzy already showing signs of her mother's determination and clarity of purpose, all shaped in some measure by the remarkable dog who had been their guardian and companion from their earliest days, the shepherd who had arrived as a temporary guest and become the heart of their home, Maximus extraordinary in his capabilities, but most remarkable in his capacity for love. As autumn deepened into winter, Maximus's movements became increasingly stiff, the cold aggravating his arthritis. Despite medication and the special ramp Michael had built, the shepherd now required assistance to climb into the family car for veterinary visit. Sarah, noticing how he would pause at the bottom of the stairs in the evening, as if calculating whether the effort to follow the family upstairs was worth the discomfort. Dr. Perez prescribed additional pain management strategies, including laser therapy and gentle hydrotherapy sessions in a heated pool designed specifically for aging and rehabilitating dogs. "Many German shepherds face mobility challenges as they age," she explained during a consultation, "but Maximus's quality of life remains good. His mind is sharp. His engagement with family strong. These physical limitations are manageable with proper care." Emma had taken on increasing responsibility for Maximus's daily care, the young girl's natural compassion blossoming. Through this relationship, she researched canine nutrition, preparing special additions to his regular food, chopped vegetables, fish oil supplements that supported joint health. She learned gentle massage techniques from videos created specifically for dogs with arthritis, applying them with careful attention to Maximus's responses. Her dedication touching Sarah, who recognized in her daughter's care the seeds of her future path. "I'm going to be a veterinarian," Emma announced matter-of-factly. One evening, as she finished Maximus's evening massage, but not just any kind, I want to help old dogs like Dr. Perez helps Maximus. The clarity of purpose remarkable in one so young, though perhaps not surprising, given the profound influence Maximus had exerted on her development. Noah, too, had developed his own special relationship with Maximus, the energetic 6-year-old. Somehow understanding when to moderate his natural exuberance around the aging shepherd, their bond expressed through quieter interactions. Noah often choosing to read his school books aloud to Maximus, or simply lying beside him during afternoon rest periods. Little Izzy at 3 approached Maximus with the fearless affection of a child who had never known life without him, climbing onto his bed to show him toys or pat his head with slightly too enthusiastic appreciation that he accepted with stoic patience, occasionally looking to Sarah with an expression she interpreted as amused tolerance, each child connecting with the shepherd in ways that reflected their individual personalities, yet sharing the common thread of absolute trust, a trust Maximus had earned. Through years of unwavering protection, winter brought heavy snow to Pinewood Lanes, transforming the landscape into a crystalline wonderland that delighted the children but presented new challenges for Maximus the shepherd, reluctant to venture into the deep drifts that had once been easily navigated. Michael clearing special paths in the Eho backyard to accommodate his needs, while Emma insisted on shortening their walks to prevent overtaxing his strength. These accommodations accepted by Maximus with dignified grace, the shepherd adapting to his changing capabilities without apparent frustration. "He's teaching us about aging with dignity," Michael observed one evening, watching Maximus supervise the children's bedtime preparations from his position at the foot of the stairs, accepting limitations without surrendering purpose. The observation resonating with Sarah, who had been contemplating similar themes in her work on a second book. This one focused on the lessons learned through Maximus's senior years. The holiday season brought Jake home on leave, his presence clearly lifting Maximus's spirits, the shepherd showing more energy and enthusiasm than he had in weeks, greeting his former owner with a vigor that momentarily belied his age. "He seems younger," Jake noted, watching Maximus move through the house with greater ease. "Happier," Sarah nodded, recognizing the truth in her brother's observation. "Your visits have always been special for him." She acknowledged, "You were his first person. That connection doesn't fade." Jake's time with them, though brief, became especially precious, moments captured in photographs, memories stored against future absences. Maximus included in every activity, his presence central to their family celebrations, his graying muzzle and dignified bearing a visible reminder of passing time, but also of enduring bonds that transcended distance and change. As winter gave way to early spring, Maximus experienced his first significant health crisis, a sudden weakness in his hind legs that left him unable to stand. One morning, the episode terrifying all of them, Sarah and Michael rushing him to the emergency veterinary hospital, while a neighbor stayed with the children. The diagnosis, both concerning and somewhat reassuring, degenerative myelopathy. The specialist explained, a progressive neurological condition common in German shepherds. This episode was likely a temporary inflammation, but the underlying condition will continue to progress. The prognosis: complex medication could help manage symptoms, but wouldn't stop the progression. Assistive devices like a rear support harness or eventually a wheelchair could maintain mobility, but his days of independent movement were numbered. Sarah sitting beside Maximus in the veterinary hospital, tears streaming silently down her face. The shepherd looking up at her with calm acceptance, as if to say this too is part of our journey. The conversations that followed were difficult but necessary. Sarah and Michael discussing quality of life considerations with Dr. Perez, establishing parameters that would guide future decisions. Maximus has always lived with purpose and dignity. Sarah emphasized, our responsibility is to ensure he doesn't suffer, that his final chapter honors who he's been throughout his life. These discussions, necessarily private, shielded from the children though, Emma, with her perceptive nature, understood. More than her parents realized, Maximus isn't going to get better, is he? She asked Sarah directly, after overhearing a phone conversation with the veterinarian, the question requiring honesty, despite Sarah's protective instincts. No, sweetheart, his body is wearing out, but that doesn't mean he can't still have good days, meaningful time with us. Emma absorbing this information with surprising maturity. Then we need to make sure all his days are special, she declared, a resolution that shaped the family's approach to Maximus's care in the weeks that followed. The rear support harness became part of their daily routine, helping Maximus maintain mobility and independence, Emma decorating it with carefully sewn patches that transformed a medical device into something personal, something worthy of Maximus's dignity. Neighborhood walks continued, though shorter and with frequent rest. Periods, the shepherd's determination, evident in his willingness to continue, despite increasing difficulty, his enjoyment of familiar scents and sights apparently worth the effort required. Michael adapted the backyard, creating an accessible, sensory garden with raised beds of fragrant herbs and flowers that Maximus could enjoy without navigating difficult terrain. The modifications practical but also deeply thoughtful, designed to enrich his daily experience despite his limitations. Therapy visits necessarily ended, though Maximus received his own therapy now in the form of visits from former patients, especially children from the reading program, and veterans from Jake's support group, who came to sit quietly with the shepherd, sharing moments of connection that required no movement, no action beyond presence. One particularly meaningful visit came from Oliver, the once overwhelmed child whom Maximus had comforted on the playground years earlier, now a confident 10-year-old who brought his therapy certification papers to show Maximus and Sarah. "I'm training with a therapy dog now," he explained, stroking Maximus's ears with gentle appreciation. "Because of him, because he showed me how animals can help when everything feels too much." The visit bringing tears to Sarah's eyes, the recognition that Maximus's influence extended far beyond their family, creating ripples that would continue long after he was gone. Through it all, Maximus maintained his essential nature, his watchfulness, his awareness of each family member's emotional state, his protective instinct now expressed through presence rather than action, though with surprising moments of capability. When needs arose, his position in the family undiminished by physical limitation, if anything, deepened by vulnerability that revealed new dimensions of connection. "He's still teaching us," Sarah observed to Michael, watching as Emma read her completed Maximus biography aloud to the shepherd who listened. With apparent interest still showing us what matters, the truth of this observation evident in how the family had rallied around Maximus's needs without resentment or burden, finding meaning in reciprocal care, giving back to one who had given so much, the children learning through direct experience about commitment, about loyalty, about loving, through difficulty lessons that would shape their understanding of relationships throughout their lives. Summer arrived, bringing warmer temperatures that eased Maximus's joint pain somewhat, though the progression of his neurological condition continued steadily. The family adapting their routines to accommodate his changing needs, the shepherd now using a custom wheelchair for longer outings, the device initially concerning to Sarah, who worried it might diminish his dignity. But Maximus accepted it with characteristic grace, seeming to appreciate the freedom it restored. Emma quickly transformed, the practical device decorating it with reflective stickers and small flags that turned heads during their neighborhood walks. Maximus's chariot, she called it. With pride, the shepherd navigating his new mobility with remarkable adaptability, learning to maneuver through doorways and around furniture with minimal assistance, his determination to remain engaged with family life Evident in his continued efforts, the children's approach to Maximus's condition revealed much about their developing. Characters, Emma practical and nurturing, focused on his physical care, researching adaptive equipment and alternative therapies. Noah protective and empathetic, often positioning himself near Maximus during family activities as if offering companionship. Little Izzy, at 3 too young to fully comprehend the situation, but intuitively gentle with the shepherd, patting him softly with whispered conversations, each child processing Maximus's decline in their own way, but united in their commitment to his comfort and inclusion. They're learning something profound about love, Michael observed watching, as Emma and Noah collaborated to help Maximus settle in the shade during a backyard gathering, that it doesn't diminish with vulnerability. That care deepens connection. Sarah nodded, recognizing the truth in his observation, lessons that will serve them throughout their lives. Dr. Mills continued her professional interest in Maximus, though her visits now focused less on research and more on friendship. The veterinary behaviorist bringing special treats and spending quiet hours simply sitting with the shepherd. His cognitive function remains extraordinary, she noted during one such visit. His awareness, his emotional processing, his engagement with family completely intact despite his physical limitations. It challenges our understanding of consciousness, what it means to be fully present despite a failing body. These observations aligned with Sarah's own experience of Maximus's continued perceptiveness, his ability to sense emotional needs, his unwavering attention to family dynamics, especially regarding the children, his essence unchanged by physical limitation, a testament to the spirit that had always defined him beyond his physical capabilities. Throughout this period, Daisy the Border Collie mix had developed her own relationship with Maximus, the younger dog initially uncertain about his changing status, but gradually adapting to a more protective role, often positioning herself near him during rest periods, alerting the family when he needed assistance in ways they might not immediately notice. She's learning from him, Brad Jenkins observed during a visit. Absorbing his awareness, his protective instincts, it's like an apprenticeship. This emerging dynamic fascinated Sarah, who had wondered how Daisy would respond to Maximus's declining health. Now witnessing a beautiful transition of roles, the younger dog assuming more active protection, while maintaining respectful deference to Maximus's senior status, the shepherd accepting this shifting dynamic with dignified appreciation, a natural evolution that ensured continuity of care for the family he had guarded so faithfully as summer progressed. Maximus's mobility continued to decline, the wheelchair becoming necessary for even short outings, his ability to stand unassisted diminishing, though his appetite remained good and his engagement with family undiminished. These changes, prompting another difficult conversation with Dr. Perez about quality of life considerations, were not at a critical decision point yet. The veterinarian assured them Maximus still has good quality experiences, meaningful engagement with family. His cognitive function remains strong. These are the metrics that matter most. Still, Sarah found herself treasuring moments with increased awareness, counting good days, documenting small joys in a journal Emma had given her specifically for this purpose. Maximus memories, her daughter had written on the cover, understanding intuitively that preservation of these moments would become increasingly important. One particularly meaningful day came with Jake's unexpected visit, a brief stopover during military transport that coincided with Maximus's 12th birthday. The shepherd's reaction to Jake's arrival remarkable in its vigor, his tail wagging with enthusiasm, his eyes bright with recognition. Despite his physical limitations, he looks happy, Jake observed, sitting beside Maximus on his special orthopedic bed, at peace despite everything. Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what her brother meant. He's always lived in the moment, she replied, fully present for whatever comes. That's been his gift to us, showing us how to be here now completely. Jake's presence adding special significance to the birthday celebration. Emma having prepared a dog-friendly cake decorated with Maximus's name, the family gathering around. His bed to share the moment, photographs taken, words of appreciation. Spoken memories recalled laughter and tears mingling in equal measure. The visit, though brief, became a treasured memory, especially when Jake shared something he had never told them before. "When I first got Maximus as a puppy," he said quietly, as they sat on the porch watching the shepherd doze in the evening light, "I was in a dark place, struggling with what I'd seen during my first deployment, considering options I don't like to think about now." He paused, gathering himself. "Having him depending on me, needing me. It gave me purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, to keep going when nothing else made sense. I never told you because it seemed too heavy a burden to place on a dog, but the truth is, he saved me long before he saved Emma." The confession bringing tears to Sarah's eyes. The recognition that Maximus's extraordinary journey had begun even earlier than she'd realized, his capacity for healing extending back to his earliest days. These revelations deepened Sarah's appreciation for Maximus's life journey, the shepherd who had saved her brother, then her daughter, then helped deliver her son, and now in his vulnerability was teaching her family about grace, about dignity, about love that transcends physical limitation. The circular nature of caregiving and receiving, a profound lesson she incorporated into her writing, now focused on completing her second book about Maximus's senior years working. Title: Wisdom of the Gray Muzzle, exploring how caring for aging animals reveals dimensions of connection often overlooked in youth-obsessed culture. The manuscript nearly complete, lacking only the conclusion. Sarah unable to write those final pages, yet unwilling to anticipate an ending still unfolding before her, instead focusing on documenting present moments, the daily gifts of Maximus's continued presence. Those gifts included unexpected moments of connection, like the afternoon when, during a particularly difficult day for Sarah, overwhelmed by work deadlines and household responsibilities, Maximus managed, despite his weakness, to drag himself from his bed to her side, resting his head on her lap in a gesture of comfort that broke through her stress, reminding her of what truly mattered. Or the night when Noah, experiencing nightmares, called not for his parents, but for Maximus the shepherd, responding with a soft whine that alerted Sarah to her son's distress. These moments, and countless others, building a tapestry of continued purpose, meaning found in presence rather than action, love expressed through being rather than doing, lessons that transformed Sarah's understanding of value beyond utility, of worth inherent, rather than earned. As autumn approached, Maximus's good days became less frequent, his mobility further limited. Though his spirit remained strong, his eyes still bright with recognition, his tail still wagging in greeting the family's routines increasingly centered around his comfort. Emma reading her completed biography aloud during evening sessions, Noah showing him artwork created at school, Izzy bringing her favorite toys to share, all included in the circle of care that had formed around the aging shepherd Michael, building an even more specialized bed with heating elements for comfort, Sarah researching additional pain management options. The family united in their commitment to honoring Maximus's journey, ensuring that each day contained moments of connection, joy, comfort. The reciprocal nature of their relationship with him, now fully realized. They who had been protected, now protecting he who had guided, now being guided, the circle completing itself in ways both heartbreaking and beautiful.